PD today. So on behalf of the OMLA board, I just would like to welcome you to our session today. We are super excited to have with us our OMLA Team of the Year and OMLA Educator of the Year from Swanton Middle School today for our PD. We have been really excited that you've joined us for our PD series this year. Obviously, I know some of the chat going on before the session started is people talking about what's going on in their districts. As we know, it's just crazy all across the state. And I feel like I keep having the conversation of if I just keep thinking that it's, going to end and then it goes on longer. And I just remember thinking in, March that, we'd be back in school in April, and April turned to May and May turned to June. And, I know that things just keep changing. But wherever you are, again, on behalf of the board, we're just so amazed at all the amazing things that, teachers and administrators and everybody is doing across the state. It's just absolutely incredible that, as things keep changing day to day and hour to hour and, week to week, that teachers across the state just keep stepping up and, just doing great things for kids wherever we are, making changes. As much as I hate the word pivoting and just making needed changes to connect with kids. So again, we appreciate you. We see all the hard work, and we are doing our best to, shout that from the mountaintops of all the great things that teachers are doing. So, keep staying strong. I know that sometimes I feel like it's, like when you have a newborn at home and you just feel like it's never going to end. And people always say the days are long, but the years are short. And I'm trying to look at this time period like that, where some days it just seems like, oh my gosh, am I going to get through this day, or am I going to get through this week of remote? But I'm hoping that soon in the future we can look back and go, wow, like that actually went, faster. We got through that, and there was a lot of, good that came out of it, even though it's somewhat of a blur, just like those sleepless nights when you have newborns at home. But again, keep staying strong and taking care of yourself as well, and, taking care of your family, but keep doing all the great things that you're doing. We have been so fortunate to partner with great educators and authors across the state this year for our virtual PD. Jack, I can see you on there now. You were a much needed break for so many of us a few weeks ago. Just laughing was just good for the soul. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate you being here today. And again, we're so excited to have with us today our OMLA Team of the Year and Educator of the Year, because they are another breath of fresh air. If you have been to our state conference and you've seen their sessions, you can hear the music blasting from the hallways and just see the energy that their staff brings. And I have been really fortunate to take a trip out to their building actually this year and just see all the amazing things happening, even while some schools are remote. And, despite masks and things like that, there was so much energy in the school and so much positivity and so many great things happening. And so we really appreciate them. And I think that you're in for a real treat today, just to hear from real, practicing educators and administrators, all the great things that they're doing and how they really built their middle school from the ground up. So I'm going to turn it over to them. But again, I do want to just formally congratulate them on our chat here today for being named our Team of the Year. It's probably one of the most incredible things that I've seen is that they team at a vertical level. And that was just really amazing to me, because you have to have 100% buy-in of your staff. It's not like, you just have to get the 3 or 4 people around you on board. Like, you have to get the entire school on board. And I got to see that in person, and it was truly incredible. So they're going to share with you some great tips today on teaming and some of the things that they did. And also, again, kudos to Matt Smith. I know that you're on here as well. The principal was named our OMLA 2020 Educator of the Year. So hopefully we get to celebrate you at our state conference this year and award you again. But congratulations, and we are so excited to learn with you today. Before I turn it over to them, I'll be moderating the chat. So if you have any questions for them, please feel free just to post it in the chat, and I'll keep track of those and, ask those questions or make sure that those get answered for you. And then also, if you are looking for some credits, we are happy to send you a certificate. An email will be sent out after today's session with a recording and a link where you can request a certificate. So if you are looking for credit, we are happy to send you that certificate. So Matt and Lee, and I don't know who is hear from your team, but I'm going to turn it over to all of you. Thank you guys for being here, and we're excited to learn with you today.
Hey, thanks so much, Michelle, for that nice intro. We're excited anytime we get a chance like this to talk with other educators. It's just another opportunity for us to learn as well. So we're pretty excited about this. We've been looking forward to this for a couple weeks now, and any of the principals and teachers out there that have signed up for this, obviously, you have a passion for education, or you wouldn't have used your time and registered for this. So I'm excited too, and I can't wait to see where the conversation goes. Lee and I have Kevin Heinschel. His video is on now. There you go, Kevin. He is our he does a little bit of everything. He's one of our intervention specialists at Swanton Middle School, and he's a phenomenal educator, and he's gonna tell a little bit of the story as well. So Mrs. Pankos, do you have anything you want to say?
No, just thanks for having us. I think we're gonna share our Matt's going to share his screen and kind of share our presentation, but Michelle or anybody feel free to chime in and ask any questions at any time, and just stop us or whatever. Anytime you have a question, just let us know.
All right, let me share my screen here. How's that look?
Perfect.
All right, so a couple of years ago, we were in a shift in our building. Here at Swanton, we had several levies did not pass in our school district, and we were sitting in about a 100-year-old building at the middle school. It's an old high school, and I think it was my first year as principal. Towards the end of my first year, our old superintendent came along and said, "Hey, listen, there's going to be some restructuring. We wanted to build a K-12 building, as many school districts had, and in our area, and it wasn't in the cards for whatever reason. So they said, building was falling apart. Our old high school and old junior high, part of it was actually abandoned, which is a whole nother story we could tell. But we were going to consolidate from 4 buildings. We had 2 elementary schools, a middle school, which was in an old high school, and then a high school that was built about 15 years ago. And so we had a couple options. We could have taken the 7th and 8th grade and moved it into the high school building, and then the 6th grade moved down to one of the elementary buildings, or we could keep it 3 buildings, an elementary, a middle school, and a high school. And I know Lee was involved with this as well, and we have a really good team here, and we pleaded and said, listen, we've got this middle school concept that we're kind of building here, and the previous principal had started doing some really good things, and I said, it's going to be a shame if you break this group up. And luckily they kept us together, and we shifted. We demolished that building, but we took one of the elementary schools and we made it a 5A building, and then the other elementary became K4, and then obviously the high school stayed the same. So we inherited a new group of teachers, the 5th grade staff, and then we kind of got together. We formed our building leadership team and our teacher-based teams and what have you. And we kind of talked about how we're incorporating these two different kind of visions together. The 5th grade team obviously was much more elementary guided and whatnot. So we said, what do we want to do, and how can we become a team and a family together? And one of the things that came about was we wanted to focus on our culture and our climate in our building. And the BLT got together and we came up with this mission statement here. Well, before that, let me back up. We said we wanted to focus on the culture of our building, and there was a couple different ways that we wanted to look at that and what we wanted to do. We were lucky enough to get a grant, a 21st century grant, and a small group of us with some of that grant money, we went down and toured the Ron Clark Academy, which has some cool things going on. And then another school in our area, Hicksville Schools, has the house concept. And we really liked some of the things that the Ron Clark Academy was doing as far as the house concept. Some of it, we're like, well, maybe that's not us, but we like the idea of the kids being in these houses and kind of creating that family atmosphere and some of the things that they were doing. So that kind of led us to this point. So here's our mission statement. So we came up with this idea. We were going to have this Swanton 7 initiative, and we wanted to promote a positive culture, and we wanted to create these middle school students for when they left us, they were ready for whatever came next, whether high school or a job interview or whatever, college, whatever was going to come to them. We wanted to make sure when they left our building, they were good people. They had the proper education that they needed, and so on and so forth. So we formed this mission statement. We decided we were going to embrace this house concept and go from there. So we made these names in these houses. We have about 100 kids per building, or per grade level in the building. So roughly 400 kids right now. We have about 67 kids that are online right now, but normally we have about 400. And each student ends up in a house. Every staff member, from the kitchen staff to the secretaries to every teacher, is put in a house as well. And then our houses, since we're the Swanton Bulldogs, we named them Dignitas, Obduro, Gratis, and Spincia, because those spell out dogs. So we wanted to keep that identity of being Bulldogs together, because you're 4 houses, but we're all under the same roof, and go on from there. Ms. Pankos, you want to take it from there?
We just, like he was saying, we split them all up into the houses, and every teacher has a house. And like Michelle was saying at the beginning, we purposely put the teachers into certain houses, and so that we could have each subject is in a different house, each like every 5th grade teacher is in a different house, and they're not in the same house as their subjects. So that we could form some relationships outside of your grade level, form a relationship and a culture that goes beyond, your 5th grade team or your math team, but all the teachers became a team all around. And then our kids we truly put them in a randomizer. Our STEAM teacher puts them in a randomizer, all the kids, and they just randomly get into the houses. We try to keep them even, but they're randomly chosen that way. As far as teaming goes, we do meet almost every single Wednesday to discuss our data. We discuss all the concerns that we have, our grade specific items, like it says here. We also just talk about building relationships with the kids. And like Matt said, we went to Ron Clark, and in Ron Clark Academy, they just mostly talk about building the relationships. If you build the relationships, then that's, the students will work harder for you. And so that's kind of one of the things that we really try to focus on, and one of the things that our teachers really are working on this year, especially because building relationships early, if we ever have to go virtual, we want the kids to have that relationship with their teacher, that they will work remote as well. Our subject teams, house teams, you can see all that. We have a BLT, and that we just ask anyone that's interested in being a part of our BLT. And we have, we have 8 teachers that want to do this. They, Ron Clark talks about your walkers and your runners and your sprinters and your joggers, and we have a lot of those runners and sprinters in our building. And so that's why teaming really works for us. And that's why, I think that we're pretty successful with what we have been doing.
It's probably our strongest leadership, the BLT. We've got a good core group of teachers that really helped us form this. Before we decided to do the house system, like I said, we met and we talked about it and what do we want the culture to look like. So we spent many hours throughout a whole summer before. We didn't want to. This is a big change. It's a little bit different. We didn't want to do anything until we had it mapped out and organized quite a bit before we rolled anything out to even the rest of the staff or in the students. So, and the BLT took the brunt of a lot of that work. So they did a great job. And Kevin is a member of the BLT. I don't know if he wants to speak to any of that.
Yeah, so this is my 6th year in Swanton, and I've been on our BLT each year. And I think that it speaks volumes that we have an unpaid position on our BLT team for educators. And every year, the number of people that want to participate in that group grows. And I think that it grows because they want to have a hand in creating more of the energy and all of the amazing concepts that we have here. It's not driven from the top down with Matt and Lee. It really is a collaborative from top to bottom of everybody that we have in this building. And I think that's also why we're having the amount of success that we are.
Real quick too, there was a question in the chat about special ed. Can you explain how intervention specialists fit into the teams?
Well, that's a good question. And Kevin, being one of our intervention specialists, he can talk to this too. But we have we have a intervention specialist for each grade level, dedicated to each grade level. They co-teach, not always, but typically a normal schedule would be like Kevin for 6th grade. He'd have 2 co-taught math classes, 2 co-taught language arts classes, and then each of those teachers usually has an intervention class or a pull-out class, depending on the schedule and what grade level they teach. I'm not sure.
In the house too, Kevin's in the house of Duro, and I think maybe 2 of the special ed teachers are in the same house, but they're all split up too, so that they all get to be house leaders, and that helps our special ed department get to know more kids than just the ones on their caseload.
And I'm sorry, Michelle, like now that maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but now that I'm screen sharing, I can't see the chat. So if anything else comes up or if I'm not answering the specific question, just let me know.
Yeah, and from a special ed perspective too, our intervention specialists, just like our students that are in special ed population, this is an opportunity for all of us to be on equal footing with those kids that we consider to be our typical learners, and to be on equal footing with the general educators in our building. And to have that type of equity and equality in our building makes this such an amazing place to work. And I think for our special ed population of students, makes them feel like they're no different than anybody else. They get to participate in everything that everybody else does, regardless of where they fit on some sort of learning spectrum.
So along with that, some with the house system came some other changes that just happened naturally. For example, we had student council that became house council. So those we make a really, really big deal out of this. Like we said, listen, if you're going to apply to be on house council, there's some pretty strict parameters that we want the kids to be able to handle. These are the people at the beginning of the year. Like if we have any guests, they're out there greeting them. They're talking about what our school looks like. They're giving tours. Like they're kind of the face of the school. So we want someone that can handle that responsibility. They get pulled out of class from time to time, so they have to be able to keep up with the academics and what have you. So student council got kind of turned into house council. So each house gets a representative from each grade level, and then one grade level gets to pick 2. That was new this year. So another structure change that we were kind of toying around with. We were looking for ways to properly do interventions with students, and this kind of ties a little bit with the intervention question, I think, but also to the gen ed students as well. We saw a piece missing for some electives, and so we have 2 different times during the day, around lunchtime and at the end of the day, where there's intervention periods. So a math teacher, for example, has a math lab in the middle of the day and a math lab at the end of the day. And so does all of the language arts or reading teachers. And what happens in those periods, if a student is behind or they're struggling, they can be assigned one of those labs everyone takes a lab during the middle of the day. And they're kind of a little bit ability group, I would say. And then at the end of the day, like if you are a student that struggled in math and language arts, it's another opportunity. So you could have a math lab and a language arts lab. If you don't need help in both of those subject areas, you would take an elective. And we just came up with tons of new electives this year. Outdoor education. There's a dance class.
My personal favorite is dance class.
Yeah, news program. The SMS news. There's STEM. There's Build It. Environmental science. Just different things like that. So we're trying to give the kids more say. If we asked them, what are we missing here? And they said, basically they wanted new courses. So we're like, okay, well, we can do that. So. So along with Michelle, how are we doing here?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. No, we're doing great. You guys are doing a great job explaining everything. We have
Okay.
about probably about 30 minutes left before we'll open it up for questions.
Okay. Well, so with the house competitions, it obviously the house system is about building relationships, and it's another way that a teacher in 8th grade is going to have contact with a 5th grader in their house, possibly 3-4 years earlier than what they normally would, and get to know those kids. And that's really the key. But at the same time, we like to have some fun with it, and we like to get the kids motivated. So obviously with that, in the Swanton 7, we'll show you in a little bit. Like we said, there's 7 things that we want the kids to do with the Swanton 7 initiative. Number 1, we wanted them to exhibit effective listening skills. So when a kid is, seen or caught, if you will, doing those things, they can earn a house point for their house. Number 2, we wanted them to have good communication skills. So when they're exhibiting that skill, they could earn a house point for that. Number 3 is use their manners. Number 4 is to work hard and be successful in whatever they do. So if they're exhibiting that trait, again, they can earn a house point. Number 5 is support, respect, and encourage people around them. Number 6 is be honest and not make excuses. And number 7, take pride in their school and themselves. So that's kind of the Swanton 7. Those are the 7 things that the essentials that we think the kids need to be successful in the future. So when they're doing those things during the school day and they practice those things, they earn house points. Along with, at the end of each quarter, as you can see on the screen here, we do different house competitions, and we try to make these like huge events that the kids look forward to. I mean, we want the kids, we're not doing a very good job. If the kids aren't talking about this a week and a half in advance, then I say, like, listen, guys, we got to get it together. We need to do something a little bit more exciting. We got to get these kids pumped up, fired up for this competition, because, they live for this stuff. They wear their house colors on Friday. They can earn a point for doing that, but at some point it kind of becomes natural. They just know on Fridays they show up, they're wearing their house color. They dress up pretty crazy. And usually, we usually do a prize, or we kind of announce or make a big deal of someone who goes all out that day, teacher or student.
Someone just asked how we do this with.
Go ahead, Ms. Panko.
Sorry. Someone just asked how we do this while during the pandemic. So as you can see, these pictures right here are during the pandemic. You can see on the bottom left Eli with his mask on. Right there, I think they were playing a game called Know the Faces. So they had to, it was a Kahoot or a quizzes game, and they had to play and see how many people in their house they could name. So that's during the pandemic. And Michelle was there with us, kind of watched our craziness that day. In the middle bottom is one of our kids. They played a social studies game. What's that called, Matt? Satara. And they had to name all 50 states and see who could do it the quickest. We did. This was back obviously in October, so we could go outside. We did kickball. They did Mario Kart, tug of war, and we did the target soccer kick. So like Matt said, we did get some money for through the 21st Century Grant that we were able to buy some of this stuff, but also we try and just do a lot of these free games, and we just did a lot of stuff outside. But we also just spent in the last couple hours trying to think of how we're going to do our second quarter competition all inside. So it is a struggle, but we're going to do it. We're going to do some dodgeball, some battleship in the gym. We are trying to figure out different games they can do, house competitions they can do in their classroom, some Dance Revolution on the Wii, I think. So we're working on it, but we're still going to do it.
Yeah, it's a great question, because we spread them out. We right across the street is a park that helped. So kids were spread out all over, a park right outside our school, and then outside the school, and then somewhere inside. So it was much easier this time. There's snow on the ground right now. It's gonna be a problem. So normally in our house competitions, everyone is in our gym. It's like a rock concert. It's loud. It's crazy. Everyone's competing. Obviously, we can't do that right now. So
fire trucks are arriving.
Say that again.
Fire trucks are arriving.
Yes, we have set off fire alarms with smoke machines and things like that. But yeah, so we've got to find ways to do games that are in small groups. So instead of competing in front of their entire school, like a sixth grade, half of a sixth grade Sapientia is gonna compete against 12 gratis sixth graders. So not quite as cool, not gonna lie, but it's something for the
Yeah,
community.
we can't fit everybody in our gym right now. Someone did ask that. No, we can't do that right now.
We've been really fortunate, I think, too, that having all staff members, including our support staff, custodians, lunch secretaries, aides, you name it. We have everybody in our building participating on these days too, in some shape, form, or fashion. That's allowed us to be able to work, kind of spider web out into the community on the days where we really need to. Earlier in the year, we utilized the high school football field and some of the other facilities around that, the soccer stadium, and a little bit of the grass around there. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have everybody in this together. I noticed Don's question about him having 900 students and how do you pull that off? I can't fathom 900 students. So 450, 400 for us takes an awful lot of work amongst 30 to 40 adults and 400 willing kids. So, but if you have everybody bought in, it can be done.
Yeah. Obviously, here's pictures, disclaimer. Obviously, this isn't this year, but this is from the year before where we could all be in the gym. But yeah, that's a good question, Don. And I know there's schools out there your size that do this. Obviously, it takes a little bit more, like you're almost in a situation where, like what we're doing now, where you have to kind of break up the games. If you don't have a gymnasium that can fit all 900, you've got to split up your time and be I guess creative with your schedule. But that is a good question. Obviously, we're half that size, so it does have some advantages being smaller for sure.
I talked to Josh Tyberski over at McCord, and I know McCord worked with you quite a bit on it. We've implemented quite a few things. We use the web, which is a student-led program. Stands for Where Everyone Belongs. But we're trying to look at taking this to another level, to what you guys are doing there. And I'm just trying to grasp my head, like you said, Kevin, with 900 kids, of how we can do that with such a large group. And we continue to grow by the day. I could probably be about 950 by the start of next year.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
And here's the thing that we've had numerous schools come visit us, and I don't think you have to do all of these things. This fits for us. And when we visited Hicksville or visited other places, like there was some stuff we're like, you know what, I don't really like that, and that's okay. And so, like for example, Hicksville does it at the high school. Well, it just doesn't fit. We didn't think it fit our culture to do. Like the high school kids were like, I don't think that's us, So, I mean. But there are things that you can take, I think, from small pieces of this that definitely will apply to, any school, for sure.
I think a lot of it is like just giving the kids more opportunities and just like the more you can do, the better. But obviously, there's things at Ron Clark, there's no chance we're ever going to be able to do. There's things at Hicksville we can't do, but there's things we can do that they can't. And there's things you could do with 900 that we couldn't do with 400. So. I applaud you for, working hard to get all 900. That's impressive.
Yeah, way to go, Don. That's awesome. I think this slide right here, this is much more important than any of the competitions. You got to remember, behind the scenes, maybe the leadership team and principals or some of the teachers, we're putting a lot of effort into those days, the house competition. But it's usually one afternoon. It looks great in the pictures and videos, and the kids will remember that. The kids from 2 years ago still talk about, hey, do you remember second quarter competition? And I lie and I say, oh yeah, that was great. But, they remember that stuff. But in our world, that was one afternoon on a Friday. You know what I mean? So that's not the biggest thing. But some of the culture piece of it, that truly is something where we want to put all of our energy into this. And, when we said this, if we're not going to be everyone has school rules and say everyone wants their kids to be good listeners. But I think one thing that made us successful is we said, listen, how is this going to help us educate kids? And we really talked about the why and why we were doing this. And I think that helped people buy in. And we talked about not just everyone tells the kids to be respectful. Everyone's got the be respectful, be responsible signs in their hallways and all this stuff. And we did too. And that's great. But I said, what are we going to do that's different? We have to live this every day. Starts with the adults. If we're not modeling these things, then don't expect the kids to listen to us. If we're going to say we're going to bring energy, then you have to have energy. If we're going to be kind to each other, great, then we can tell the kids to. But if we're not, well, then what's the point? So I think we really had to have some of those conversations before, we did these things. And I think one of the best things I learned at, Hicksville when we visited them is they were very deliberate. And what I mean by that is they give their kids an opportunity to model these things, because how many times do we really give middle school kids a chance to interact with adults that aren't their teachers or their parents? Well, we weren't doing it very much at all. So now we've changed that. So we're very deliberate. We have a plan. We're going to invite people in. They're going to eat lunch with their kids. Now our kids are going to get scored to see if they had proper manners, and maybe there's an incentive out of it, but we're going to give them opportunities. Anytime someone comes over, we get excited. Okay, great. I'm not going to go greet you at the door. Some of the kids are going to go greet you, and it's going to give them an opportunity, and then we're going to walk with them, and we're going to tell them, okay, I want you to do a tour. How are you going to do this? So you got to give the kids a chance to do these things. You got to give them leadership opportunities, and not just the best ones that can already do those things. We got to give all the kids a chance to do those things. So our amazing shake, that's something not very many schools are doing it around us, but to me, it's a no-brainer. It's a lot of planning. It's hard, but our amazing shake competition, it's the best thing I've ever done in education. Our kids, when they get done with it, they have just, they're just full of confidence. They're so excited because they don't want to do it. They get through it, and they're just, it's amazing to hear their, like, oh my gosh, Mr. Smith, I was doing this interview and I was nervous, but then I did, those are little things that I think we can all do. We have our kids stand and speak in the classroom. We make sure that they're looking at people, and when they don't, we correct them on it. And we tell them at the beginning, like, listen, we're not here to be mean to you or whatever, but we want you to sit up straight. If I address the kids, if I walk into the gym, if I walk into the lunchroom, at this point, they should already know. If our 7th and 8th graders don't know, they're not going to like me, because I'm going to stop, and they're all going to turn. They're going to turn their knees towards me, their shoulders towards me. They're going to be looking at me. Their mouths are going to be quiet, and they're going to be listening. And they're not raising their hand, because if they're raising their hand, they're thinking about talking and not listening. Those things have to be just embedded in the culture. But if we don't practice them, don't think that's going to happen. I think those are the things that we've tried to be very deliberate, and you can read those things. But the Amazing Shake, if you're not familiar with that competition, it's kind of like a professional skills, a soft skills competition, if you will, where you have all the kids in a grade level go through, and you bring in outsiders, business people, people in your community, and they get rated on basically whether they, it started with a handshake competition, but then it turned into their poise under pressure, how well they can, whatever. We've had to make beds before in a time limit. They have to sit down at a restaurant and order. We have them answer an angry phone call. You name it. We put them in different situations, and kids have to respond and use their manners and communication skills to score well, basically. And we could talk a little bit more about that as we go.
Matt, you had mentioned too about walking into the gymnasium and the kids just have this expectation now that they're going to turn and give you attention, or Mrs. Pancoast, or any adult for that matter. The first thing that we really did to establish like a unified set of culture was we asked our educators to start small. What's one small thing that you could change to your classroom that might help you to gain control of it again and gain that attention? And we started doing a shout out or an attention getter. And that was the first thing that we did after coming back from the Ron Clark Academy. And now it's still to this day is ingrained in every one of our classes, where if you say a certain phrase, the students know in your room that they better be finding who the speaker is at that time and who said that. And if Matt walks into a room and says SMS woof, our students pound on a desk and they respond back to him. This is just a small step that we took. So for any of you that look at this and are already starting to have your head spinning about how do you pull all this off, if you can at least get your staff all doing one thing uniformly to gain attention in the classroom, you're going to start to turn the tides in your favor.
One of the things too on this slide that Matt is sharing right now is, are adults modeling this, and how do we get the kids to, focus in on these 7 skills? And so the first year we rolled it out, we do what's called Swanton 7 boot camp. So for the first 10 days, usually, we start schools in mid-August, and we usually have about 10 days before Labor Day. So those 10 days during our electives or our SOAR or our some of our non subject time, we go through each of the 7 skills, and we are intentional, and we model every single one of these skills, and we do lessons around our effective listening and communication, even taking pride in your school. So each day is a different lesson, and I know I said 10, but sometimes the lessons take a little longer, or we do a Swanton 7 boot camp scavenger hunt at the end. So we teach a Swanton 7 chant. So we are intentional and make sure that every single kid knows from 5th grade to 8th grade exactly what our 7 skills are, and we continue to model those over and over again, even after those 10 days are up. But after those 10 days, the kids are expected to know them and be able to recite them, and to be showing that they know how to follow them as well. So I think having that boot camp at the very beginning of the year is very important for us, to make sure that not only the teachers are, getting back into the swing of things, but that we're modeling it, and that the kids are, prepared to, if a guest does come in the building, they know exactly, what's going on. So our 5th graders learn our Swanton 7 before they even know what house.
Hey, Matt, before you go into Friday, I kind of want to piggyback off of what Lee said. So with our Swanton 7, one of the things that we're trying to do too is, it's one thing to just say, great job with doing that, right? We also came up with a couple of things that we use at our school, one of them being a shout out sheet. And we take time during our morning announcements to recognize kids for doing positive, praiseworthy things. And sometimes it can be as small as choosing to be honest when they've made a mistake, when they've been caught doing otherwise. These are things that, we have to recognize the positive that we see in our kids, because right now we're in such a negative culture. The other thing that we have and that we utilize is called a posigram. This is something that we can mail home to parents. And it says on there, hey, we caught your child doing this thing here, great. And any one of our staff members can send those home. And it's something that, I love filling them out as a teacher, because I can't tell you how many of my special ed kids that their parents say to me, thank you for giving me something positive to talk to my child about. Because when it comes to school and my kid, we don't always get to talk about positive things because it's so challenging for them. So those are a couple of things that could support whatever cultural change you do in your building as well.
I think, so going back to our TBT meetings, I am not a fan of after school staff meetings, whole staff meetings. I know sometimes they're needed, but one thing so we have common planning time for each grade level. So each Wednesday we'll meet unless there's no reason to meet, because I don't want to waste people's time. So maybe once a month it may get canceled, but on those Wednesdays when we meet, we'll dedicate some. If we're not talking about interventions with students or relationships with students, we're who's making positive phone calls, what posigrams are we sending out, what do we know about these kids. Tuesdays and Wednesdays for the first 15 minutes of school, the kids have advisory period, and basically the game plan for the staff is you need to learn those kids that everyone has a handful of kids in there. Your job is to keep track of their grades. You need to know everything about their home life, what's going on with this kid, keep track of them, do some fun things with the kids. They can be working in there, but if the kids are working in there in the morning on something they didn't get the night before, they're asking you a question. If you're not doing something, then you should be having a one-on-one conversation with those kids. We like to put all the kids in a drawing on those Wednesday meetings, and we'll kind of do like a draft and just pick kids. Hey, you got to learn something that no one else knows about this kid before the next meeting that we have on this. Just simple stuff like that, and you'd be surprised when everyone comes back to report, there's just things that we don't know. Oh my God, I didn't know her dad had cancer. I didn't know, oh, she raises they do horses. Like I pick up, it's helpful to me. It's helpful to Lee because, the teachers they're on the front lines, more so than we are. Like the nuggets that they bring back are huge, and it just helps when you at least know what they're going through. I mean, all stuff that everyone knows, but I just think we made a shift and we made that the game plan. We're trying to get rid of stuff that you can read in an email. Now, that's been tough for some of our teachers. I think got used to like meetings where we're rattling off stuff that easily could have been in an email, and we stopped doing that, and they had to adjust. And it's like, listen, read, read your email. Like it was sent out. You can figure it out. You don't need me to go over it for you. And I don't know, Kevin, you tell me if I'm wrong. We're to the point where now I think people are used to that, and we have a purpose for our meetings. And if there's not a purpose, then I'm not going to have the meeting. I'm not going to waste people's planning time to do that. So
one of the things that I just thought of is when building relationships and coming back with new ideas or new things that we learn about kids. The one thing that I have found interesting about the pandemic, or one thing that's been kind of different and actually helpful, is recently we've had to quarantine a lot of kids, and Matt and I call home, and we split the list and we make phone calls, and we're learning a lot about the kids when we call home. Well, this person lives with all these different people, or they only have a dad, they don't have a mom. So we're learning a lot more about our kids and their families too through this pandemic. So that's one positive that has come off of it.
we make a big deal out of Friday because Friday is the end of our week. And that is, if you look down here at the bottom, that is when we announce who won the week's point total. So we have a leaderboard right here in the cafeteria, and we open the curtains during each grade level's lunch, and they find out who gets the belt. So we have a championship belt that house gets to hold if they win for that week. Friday is also the day that the kids dress up in their house colors, and we kind of made it a tradition. This year has been a little bit of a struggle with Friday, but we like to get some groups together and dance out front. We try to do it social distance this year. It's not quite the same, but we're rolling with the times. But so we sometimes we have one of our teachers is a dance instructor on the side, so she likes to teach the staff after school some different coordinated dance moves. I am not a dancer, so I volunteer to video usually, so no one wants to see me out there dancing. But yeah, so that's Friday is became a theme for us, and the kids kind of know, and they get excited to come in on Friday morning. And our goal basically is just to put a smile on their face when they walk in. So
did you mention the belt right there in the middle?
Right here. Yep.
Oddly enough, on our Facebook page too, once we started doing these Fridays, when we have music blasting and a light show going on outside, the number of parents that wanted to drop their kids off at school seemed to rise significantly too. So I'm not sure who enjoyed it more. Is it the kids, the parents, or the teachers? But definitely sounds like their parents and the community really appreciate that we're starting our days off on Fridays, celebrating the fact that we had a great week.
And some of this is spilled over into, you see this picture there, the ladies in front of that purple table. We have an annual manners luncheon because we said, well, how are we gonna know if the kids are using their manners outside of our classroom? So now all the kids learn a lesson on how to set a proper table setting. They have to show that they can eat properly and use the proper manners while they're eating food and carry on a conversation. So we turn our cafeteria into a fine dining establishment. We call it SMS Italiano, and our food staff people, Chef Adam and before him, Christian Martinez was our food service director, and they helped us out. So they kind of do like a little bit fancier school lunch that day, and all the kids walk in and they get sat with a hostess, and we have candlelight, and kids kind of earn the opportunity to represent their house. For if they do a good job during the school-wide one, then they can eat with, we invite the mayor in and some of the business leaders, and the houses then compete. They all we give the kids a bunch of supplies and say, okay, you got 20 minutes, you got to set a table. So they get graded on their decorations and then how they handled the conversation with the business leaders. And then, so we turn that into a competition, and then there's always got to be a winner at Swanton Middle School. So it spilled off into our junior high events. If you look on the top right-hand corner there, we said, you know what, we need to get some more people at our, basketball games, wrestling, volleyball. So we say, hey, listen, kids, if you want to come at halftime, between games, we'll do some house competitions there, just silly stuff, just minute to win it games, and you'd be shocked. We've had like 150 kids, half 200 kids, half the population of our student body show up at volleyball games. The other team's like, what is going on? I'm like, don't worry about it. So it's more exciting. And then obviously the athletes that are playing, it's amazing. They can compete in front of a bunch of their classmates, and it's exciting. So we like to do after school events. Sometimes on Fridays, if we can get enough teachers gathered together, we'll do like we'll call them extravaganzas. The kids can stay for like an extra hour and a half, and we'll do basketball, volleyball, dodgeball, karaoke in the cafeteria, just little stuff like that, just to get the kids excited.
Hey, Matt, before you move on, real quick, Nick DeSenza would like to know how the SMS Italiano compares to the service at the mail pouch.
That's great. I'd say it's on par. It's on par. Very close.
A lot more fun.
SMS Italiano is a dry restaurant, though, and I think that's probably the biggest difference.
And also, when you're talking about the house competitions and things like that, I know a couple of people have asked about points, and that is coming up in a future slide here. We also posted the link for this slideshow in the chat. So if you want to follow along or have a copy of it, it's in there that you can click on and follow along with that. But there was a question just about like this idea of vertical team. So if maybe you could just review that, like how there's a combination or how that works in these house competitions, or that vertical team idea. Okay.
Can you read the question, or do you want to answer the question?
I think it just said how does vertical teaming work, and I think and whoever asked that, if I don't explain it, go ahead and ask again. But we have we have in each house or team, if you want to call it that, we have a 5th grade teacher, a 6th grade teacher, a 7th grade teacher, and an 8th grade teacher. And so and then they also are split up by a subject level: math, science, social studies, language arts, and then also the special ed is in, one from each house is in there. And like when we keep saying teaming, like our whole school is involved. We have each secretary's in a house, our librarians in a house, our custodians, each one of them are in a house, our cafeteria, our cafeteria workers, each one of them are in a house. So by teaming, we just mean like every single person in our school is a part of a team. It's not just our 5th grade team, our 6th grade team, our 7th grade team, our 8th grade team. It's not just our math team or our social studies team. Everyone is in a house. Everyone commits to this culture. Everybody commits to being a part of leading their house in some way, leading their team in some way, and then reporting back to other teams. If the 8th grade Sapentia teacher wants to, they come up with something awesome. If every once in a while we'll share our ideas, but we're also pretty competitive too. So I don't know
if this answers the question, but we do have a traditional PLC concept as well.
Yeah.
We have a district leadership team and our building leadership team, and we are built in a grade level teaming to begin with, I guess. So all the 6th grade staff have common planning together. 5th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, they all have the same. So we're built. I guess we said starts with that. Our grade levels have common planning, and we're built like maybe a traditional PLC model. But I think this helps with the house system because you're getting different teams built vertically as well.
And I'll just add real quick, from my visit there, what was really cool, I know that Jack had mentioned it in the chat just about the game where, you had to recognize each other's faces. What's really neat about the vertical system is when they go into these house challenges, it's all of the grades together. It's not just, you know, the 8th grade versus the 5th grader. Oh, the 8th graders always win because they're 8th graders. Like, it's everybody. And so it was really neat to see, because, you know, I went to Swanton this fall, and, you know, it was a couple weeks into the school year, but that challenge was those 8th graders had to know the 5th graders in their group, you know, to be successful in that challenge. And so it's really neat too, because I know a lot of schools might do web or an orientation where you have your 5th and your 8th grade, and maybe they touch base once a year, a couple times a year. But this is like a constant interaction between all of the grade levels, and they have to take care of each other. You know, they have to know about each other and care about each other, because like their competition, their points depend on it too. And so it's just like it's like a constant checking in with each other. And that was really neat to see too, that, you know, I feel like the 5th graders always know the 8th graders because they're the older ones, but it forces, you know, the other ones to really take care of the younger ones in the school too. So I think maybe hopefully that answered the question too, that in the competitions, it's not just one grade level, like they're all competing as a mixed grade level team together to earn points.
This year, there's some where it's just grade levels competing because we can't put them all together. But yeah, it's built so that they're all together. And Michelle's 100% right. It's created natural mentoring relationships. Obviously, the difference between a 5th and 8th grader, everyone knows, like, this different mentalities and social, emotional, physical, everything is different. And we were really worried when we inherited the 5th grade teams. We're like, man, those kids are so small, and like, it's, you know, like, how is this going to go? And 5th graders and 8th graders in the same building. And I think if we've done one thing well, we've done a good job, like, really working with the 7th and 8th graders, saying, listen, this is your responsibility. Because the kids love to get house, but they love to win, obviously. But the house point to a 5th grader and a house point to an 8th grader, those are two different things. A 5th grader, I mean, you tell them, hey, listen, you can get a house point if you do that, and they're going bonkers. You know, they'll go crazy, do whatever. An 8th grader, you know, they kind of want to do it, but it just depends. You know, they're a little, you know, they're cooler. You know, it has to kind of be on their terms sometimes. So, which is fine. That's perfect. That's great. So what I do at the beginning of the year, or what we all do in the whole 8th grade team, is to listen. Sometimes we look at it as a teaching moment. This isn't about you. I know that you guys think everything revolves around you, but sometimes it doesn't. And I just say, listen, here's the deal. If we're in a competition, and maybe it's not your favorite thing, or if you're in the hallway and you see one of those 5th and 6th graders, because I'm telling you right now, when you were that age, you live and died by these things. It's super exciting for them. You are not going to be the one to ruin it for them. And they're all like, so I was like, it's your responsibility. You need to take them under your wing. You need to make sure that they're excited. And I think when they look at it in that point of view, then they're like, okay, yeah, that's right. I guess we are kind of the, you know, the older grade level of the school, and the kind of the caretakers of these younger ones. So I think we kind of challenge them to mentor the younger ones, and I think that helps as well.
I think some people were asking, Matt, while you were talking, is about how we get the kids together to actually learn about each other and meet. So, and we can share our schedules. I can maybe send them to Michelle or something, but once a month we make it a point to have what's called house meeting day. And instead of eating with their 5th, you know, as 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, they meet and they eat with their houses, and during our lunch time, and they rotate, you know, and they eat with their house. They all sit together at lunch. You know, the house of gratis all gets to sit together and eat. And then they have like an hour and a half of time to meet and learn about each other. We play, you know, get to know you games. We practice for competition. So we make it a point, and that's another thing that I'm glad you asked, is that we do make it intentional that at least monthly we have a house meeting day, and you know, like, get to know each other.
Yeah, it's not like a whole. Typically, they're not a whole day. It's not like 6 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
We created a schedule where along the, like, basically the middle of the day. So it usually takes about 2 hours, and as long as it's you know, if we're building relationships, I think it's well worth the time that we're putting into it, as long as we have a purpose and an objective. Because like that was definitely some of our fears at the beginning. Like, well, listen, we're going to do these competitions. Well, that's, you know, that's minutes where we're not reading, and you know, oh, we're going to do a house meeting. Well, you know, like, the kids aren't working on math when we're doing that. Are you sure this is a good idea? And I had the same fears, and we kind of said, listen, you know, we've got to be all in if we're going to do this. And here's why I think it's important, because when these kids are now in your math class and you want them to respond, or they're having a bad day, you're going to be a lot better off if they trust you, if they like you, if they know about you, if they're happy to come to school that day, if they get along with their classmates, if they have someone that they feel confident in, even if it's a 7th grade or 8th grade, whoever it is, that, you know, they want to come that day. In the end, we're going to win. You know, maybe we lose a few minutes of academic, you know, content, but it's right now we're willing to roll the dice with that. I think having a social media footprint is super important. Our philosophy is basically we flood the airways with as much positive content as possible. And at some point, I think some of the other schools around us, even some of our own district, probably get super annoyed with me and Lee and the whole team, just because like we're constantly out there, and like we invite the newspaper and the TV stations to our building all the time. We're to the point where like we're on first name basis, and they know, and if they'll tell me no if they have to, but I'll just keep asking them and keep badgering them until they come out. And I think it's important because when our community sees that, they love it. They love seeing their kids on TV. They love seeing the great things that we're doing. They love seeing when the teachers are doing creative lessons and things like that. So we try to make a point to, if we can, it's cumbersome for administrators. I get it. And like, it burns me out, but like we try like a couple times a week, we're going to try to feature something positive that we're doing, that either the kids are doing, the teachers are doing, or something fun. That the parents can just see like, okay, that's not a bad place for me to send my kids. And
then the parents and the community are there to support us when we need them. I can't tell you how much easier it is to call a parent nowadays, now that they know how hard we're working to make sure that their kids have the best education and the best community here as possible. And when we do our amazing shake, we need 60 or more people to come in this building and help us. And so when they see all the cool stuff we're doing, they jump on the chance to come into our building.
And if you don't wait for the news to come for you. I guess that's what I learned. I guess every once in a while they'd say, hey, what's going on? You got any honor roll kids or whatever when I first started? And I don't wait for them. Sometimes I'll make my own news press release. I'll just make it up and just send it to them until I annoy the crap out of them and they start publishing what I want. And I think you kind of got to have that mindset, because they can find all the negative stories in the world, but sometimes they have to have the positive ones thrown at them. So I would encourage teachers, principal, doesn't matter. If you're doing something great, write the story and send it to them.
And I know that it's like Matt said, sometimes it feels cumbersome and difficult to reach out there and to try to coerce these news crews to come into your building and coerce other people to come into your building and participate. But I think the question that I would ask of you is, if you're not digging your fingers deep into the dirt of your community, how are they going to know that you're there? And I think for us, the fact that we have been pounding on doors for 3.5, 4 years now of newspapers, of local businesses, standing in the streets, celebrating the things that we do with our kids, having almost all of our teachers with Twitter accounts and putting things on their own personal Facebook pages. It's for all of these reasons that we've been able to get meetings with people that have been able to help support us financially, that have been able to help give us a greater visibility in the world around us. I think it's because of our unabashed love for our kids and willingness to step out there that we've been able to get some things happen, in our school that the typical school that's 400 kids wouldn't. It's because we're willing to do that. We're willing to sometimes embarrass ourselves to give the kids a smile.
A lot of questions about the points, Matt, if you want to try and get there.
All right. I'm going to scroll through the slides a little bit here.
There we go.
Okay. So every teacher, first of all, let me start by saying you can do this digitally. For example, Hicksville actually Power School. If some schools use Power School for grading, we're a Power School. You can actually have your tech department set up a app so you can actually add those into the grading system. We didn't feel like that was something we wanted to do. There's also apps out there that people will sell, like Ron Clark Academy or other companies will sell apps where you can keep track of this house system digitally, and it can even be on your website. We are more comfortable just keeping track. Each teacher gets a copy of this right here, the Swanton 7 house points. They get a copy of that every week because the teacher that volunteered to collect the points every week, she likes to do it on paper, so that's what we're going to do. And then we plug that into a document that parents, students, they can go to our website and they can check out the points as well, and they can see it on social media. But each teacher has one of these. Some of them have made laminated boards in their room, so they can just keep track of it and erase it, start over at the end of the week. Or some use this paper copy. And so what happens is, if they see someone, if you can see the top there, so someone using their manners, and it's a student from Dignitas, then go ahead and make a tally mark. End of the week, they total them up. They send them to our teacher who does the totals, and she goes right before lunch. She goes down there, she slides them into the scoreboard there, and that's that. So we have had conversations as a staff. We want to make sure that we're consistent, because when we first started, we made this mistake, and a lot of schools will do this. You might have your happy-go-lucky art teacher, and if a student brought their, and I'm not picking on art teachers, by the way, disclaimer. If a kid brings in their homework, oh my God, that's 1,000 house points. I love you. And then you might have your hardcore, it's a rite of passage to get an A in my class, language art teacher, let's just say that person exists. And, he's given, the kid saves an orphanage, and he's willing to give a half a point. Well, we've got a problem there. So we had to kind of sit down and say, okay, here's what things are worth. And here's how you earn house points, and this is what we're looking for. So it wasn't, so when we first started the first couple of months, it was kind of just we were shooting from the hip, and it was wild. And we kind of said, okay, well, we better fix this and streamline a little bit. So we just had a meeting and said, okay, here's an example. If a student would do this, obviously the teachers have some leeway, but like you see the bottom, like teacher incentive, like some teachers will say, listen, I'm going to do a 20-book challenge. Kids read 20 books in a certain amount of time, they're earning a house point for their house. So they can individualize it, but you want to definitely streamline it so that you don't have just cowboys out there giving 100 points and then someone else giving 1. So is there any other questions on house points that I did not cover there?
I don't know. I'm having trouble keeping up. Michelle, did you notice, or Kevin?
I think that answered all the one about, I think people were just curious as to how you keep track of them.
Yeah.
And I think that chart answered that question, because that would go along with your competitions then, that they would just keep them, per house, and then they would get added on as a bonus to that. So I think that answered all of those. We probably, because of time, within the next, I would say maybe it's already past 4:30. So within the next, 10 minutes or so, should probably start to, wrap up in case people are driving home or things.
Okay.
You have a lot of great stuff in your slides. And again, we will definitely share this presentation out with everybody and share the slides out with everyone. But yeah, if you want to go through some of your key points over the next 10 minutes, and then if anybody else has any very specific questions, if you want to get those in the chat now so we can make sure that we get those answered for you. I know there's a lot of great videos in your PowerPoint and everything that people can take a look at, which is awesome. So thank you guys for sharing those.
Yeah.
But if anybody has any specific house or teaming questions that you want answered before our time is up, please submit those now. Okay, thanks.
I did want to touch on the amazing shake competitions, because I talked about it earlier, and this so if you look at this later, it kind of gives you an overview of how it started, the national competition, the whole deal, and then there's a video on here of what we do. And how we do it. We've helped several schools get started on this. So, yeah, I mean, it could be as small or as big as you want it to be.
Diane. Well, they're not in high school.
I'll let you guys watch that on your own. But yeah, highly recommend looking into this. It's absolutely wonderful for kids this age.
Some people were asking if any schools around there, if Matt and I would always love to compete as soon as this pandemic is over, if we can somehow come up with a competition you know, Swanton, I know isn't super close to all the other people I know that are asking, but we would love to send, you know, somehow get our, you know, our top 20 to compete against somebody else's top 20 at some point. That would be awesome.
And this last slide here, we are not, I can assure you, and my wife will guarantee this, I'm not smart enough to come up with these ideas. We had a lot of help. We stole a lot of ideas from other people. We searched for things. It didn't all come in together. It's not like one day we snapped our fingers and like all this was put into place. There was a lot of hard work involved. I'm not going to lie, but it's small steps. So you can do any of these things. It does seem overwhelming when you look at it, but you could just take several of these small things and improve your school just like that tomorrow. And you know, ask for help. That's the biggest thing. If we wouldn't have asked people for help, we would have never got here. So just reach out. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to tell you no. I mean, I just go and visit schools, and if I like something, great. And if I don't, then I'm out a little bit of time.
We also visited companies in our area too. Like, what do you want out of kids? What do you want when kids graduate? What, you know, that's kind of how we came up with the 7 essential skills. Is, you know, you know, the businesses around here, like, kids don't even know how to communicate. They can't even respond to an email. They don't know how to look me in the eye. So, you know, they're always stuck, you know, looking at their phones. So they don't know how to look people in the eye anymore. So we went to businesses, we asked them. And now, if, you know, if we forget to invite them to an event, we get in trouble by them. Like, why wasn't I invited? So they love to come and they love to help. And we're glad we have the community that we do, and we have the buy-in that we do from our business.
They've got to be your luncheon guests. They can be your judges and referees for the competitions. They can come in and talk to a class. We go visit the local car dealership, and they're amazing. They came up with a way. They divided their business into 7 sections, and each, so the parts department, the service, the sales, they all take our kids around and show how they use Swanton 7 at McNeil Chevy. So it's amazing. So each house of eighth graders takes a trip to McNeil, which is just down the road on the other side of town, and you know, they learn how they use Swanton 7 in the real world. So you know, you don't need to ask them for money. Like we said, what do you want kids to know? Would you come and be a referee? What do you like? What could we do to help improve the community? They'll give you plenty of answers. And what started happening is they're like, hey, can we give you some money? Yep, you can. You sure can. And yeah, I mean, sometimes just asking for their time and their advice leads to bigger and better things. So I would encourage that.
And I know that, you know, every year you keep adding on events and it becomes bigger and bigger. And one of the questions was, you know, how do you feel about the longevity of this and the energy that like it keeps taking? So if you could just tell us about how many years it took you to go from like creating a middle school to get to this point, and then, you know, how the energy of your staff is in terms of like, you know, continuing at that pace and like, you know, building.
Well, that's a good question. I think I said it earlier about the process to get there is not something you want to just throw in there like the whole thing. As far as like the house system, you know, the amazing shake. If someone wanted to do that, you'd start prepping right now. You could have a great amazing shake next spring. House system, you want to start that in January? That's a horrible idea. Like you don't want to do that. But for us, it was basically a spring to think about it, a spring to really prep and think about it. And, hey, we're going to do this, and tell the staff like, hey, when you come back in, you know, in the fall, like expect changes. And then we set dates and said like, hey, we're going to meet during the summer and have this all organized and set up. But I mean, it ended up being like a good year to prepare for the house system. And then some of it just naturally happened. Like, okay, well, how can we do this, or how can we do that? So, you know, a lot has changed from year 1 to year 2, and now we're into year 3. How long can it go? I don't know. But it's going well. So we're just going to kind of hold on and go as long as the kids and the community are buying into it, the staff is buying into it, we'll continue to do it. It's hard to say from talking to people that have done it for a while. The advice that we have gotten for example, from Hicksville, is to keep things fresh. You got some things get stagnant if you do the same thing over and over again. So at the end of the year, one thing that they always do is they always say, hey, this is out, this is no longer working. And then what are we going to add new, and what are we keeping? What are we throwing out? And so on and so forth. So they kind of have that meeting talking about those items. And we kind of started doing that at the end of last year too. And I don't know. We'll see how long it goes. They've been doing it for 10 years now. So I think there's hope that we can sustain this and continue to do this.
Good news is we get new kids every year, and
yeah,
they're always excited, and they re-energize us.
Yeah, when the fifth graders have the reveal day and they find out their house, it kind of just resets the whole process, and they're so excited, and the other kids are there to greet them, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, so they kind of get pumped up about it, and it just kind of starts the year with a fresh, level of energy. So
and each year they get to do a different thing. In 8th grade, they get to do the gratis trip, or the trips to McNeil. In 7th grade is when they do the amazing shake. So each year they get to look forward to something else. So it's not like every year they're doing the amazing shake. Every year they're doing this. Some things we try to get them in the Manners Luncheon every year. But other, the gratis or the McNeil trips, they only get to do in 8th grade. And some of the trips, like we try to go to the 180th with, our military base around here. So, they get to do more on-site things when they're in 8th grade. So they have things to look forward to.
That's awesome. And I love sorry.
I think where we've been able to keep this going too is that I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that as teachers, we get tired from this. We get exhausted, but I think that when you talk to
educators, that's not what I wrote for you to say.
What's that, Matt?
I said, that's not what I wrote for you to say.
The educators in this building would tell you, if they've been here longer than 3 years, that these are the best 3 years that they've had, because every year it gets better. Even if they're tired, there's somebody there that lifts them up. And truth be told, oftentimes it's a kid. It's not always one of your staff members. It's not always one of your administrators. The kids lift us up. The parents lift us up. They hold us accountable. We've got high schoolers now that when they see us in that building, they say, gosh, what I wouldn't give to be an 8th grader again. And I think that is so powerful, and it holds me to a higher standard.
And Kevin, I know you have access to the chat. Somebody had posted about following you guys on social media, and I would encourage everybody in the chat to do that. If you could post up the Twitter handles for your school and things to follow. I love following Swanton on social media and on Twitter and things, because it truly is energizing. So if you really want to get a glimpse of all the great things that they're doing, definitely follow them on Twitter, and you'll get to see how things are working during the pandemic and what the house competitions look like. And there's constantly staff members tweeting out amazing lessons and business partnerships and all kinds of great things that are going on. So yeah, definitely, I think you can pick up on some of that energy and the traditions and all the great things going on if you check them out. Thanks, Matt. I think they just posted it up in the chat there, so you can follow all their events on social media as well. And I don't see any other questions in the chat.
I think Jack asked a long time ago about electives, and I think Kevin said he's going to share with him our electives. But one cool thing is that we asked our teachers, what do you want to teach? What energizes you? So we got those electives because that's what our teachers thought would be what they would want to teach, and our kids are loving those electives.
That's great. And we just posted up the link to the Facebook page as well in the chat. But as we begin to wrap up here, again, I just want to thank everybody for attending today. I want to thank Matt and Lee and Kevin for you guys giving up your time this afternoon to put together that awesome PowerPoint and just share all the amazing things going on. I know even just from being there, once, that it doesn't even, do justice to the amazing things, going on. Like I know you guys could talk for hours about all the awesome things going on. So please take some time this evening. We will send out a recording of this session so you can go back and listen to some things. We'll send out a copy of the PowerPoint so you can go through that on your own time. And I would encourage you to take a look at the video links and really reach out to them if you have any questions. They have been a great partner to so many different schools in OMLA as far as welcoming visitors and just sharing their ideas. So I know I've been out there to visit and they're always welcoming people. So I would encourage you to reach out with any other questions if you have any, and I know they'll be willing to share. Somebody also just posted about presenting at OMLA. And they said they've been following your school ever since. So yes, we would encourage you. We're still working on our state conference for this year. We have not given up hope yet. So it is like always my refresher. I really needed that this fall here, but we're still working on making that happen this year. So I know that Swanton always presents some great sessions there where you can really see their energy live as well. So hopefully we'll still be able to do that, and you'll be able to see and meet some of their teachers there. I know it's actually kind of not too far from where you guys are at Kalahari, so not too far of a drive for you guys. So yeah, stay tuned for more info on our state conference coming up. But again, thank you, Matt and Lee and Kevin, for your time and for all the great things that you're doing and all the ideas that you're sharing, because it is making a difference. And even just seeing that in the chat, like there's so many schools in Ohio that are, doing new and great things for kids because of things that they heard from you and ideas that they heard from you. And so we can just keep that, ripple effect going and that chain reaction going. We'll just keep impacting more and more kids across the state. So awesome job. Thank you guys so much. Anything else before we end from your end?
Thanks for doing this, Michelle. It was fun. Honored to do it, and I hope you guys keep doing these PDs. This is cool. Very cool. I love Jack. I saw Wes. Awesome. Yeah. And for everybody in the chat, thank you guys again for attending. And if you have any ideas for speakers or people that you would like to hear, again, as a board, we sat down and virtually in the summer, we're usually meeting together, and we knew we needed to do something to keep people engaged. And this seems to be working pretty well. So we'll continue to offer these and, grow and expand throughout the year. So if there's anybody or any ideas that you would like to hear, just, send us an email and we'll get those lined up for you. So again, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys have a great afternoon. I hope that you've all gotten your power back and have shoveled out of your driveways. I don't know, where you are in the state. Up in the Cleveland area, we measured about 16 inches of snow yesterday. It was pretty crazy. So I hope that you all are warm and safe and everybody's healthy. And our virtual sessions have concluded now for the 2020 year, hoping for a better 2021. We'll pick up in January with our virtual sessions. January 12th, we have Kevin Honeycutt lined up with engaging the lost learner. So we'll be sending out some emails about that, and we hope to see you then. And in the meantime, we hope that you have a wonderful holiday and time with your family and time to just recharge. And like I said, just keep going. So thanks, guys. Thank you.